Okay, well, there was some email banter the other day about the highway. I think it's the Highway 20 bridge that goes over Steamboat Rock, um, and how the the Iowa River Railroad that's taken over the Minneapolis and St. Louis track that goes south from Ackley to a fairly small ethanol plant. Um, it used to go down all the way to Marshalltown, but they've truncated the track. I think the ethanol plant is their only customer. This is looking south from the Illinois River Railroad's trackage. And I guess the only point of all this is that even though they don't go anywhere south of that ethanol plant, I think they still would need that track under the highway bridge as a switch lead. We're looking north now. There's the ethanol plant to the right of the locomotive. At the time I took this picture, that old Jeep 30 was their only locomotive. Now they have a second one, and well south of there, the tracks were still in place in 2013, and the railroad crossings were still marked as active railroad crossings, even though it was quite clear from the rust on the rails that nothing was going on. This is just about, I guess you'd say, Steamboat Rock. And you can see that the tracks are shiny only because cars have. Professor Norton, although God knows why, he hasn't published anything in notes since he won that Nobel. Is there a problem? Oh, nope. Anyway, this little, I guess, a grain elevator was one of the online industries. Here's a more recent shot showing their other locomotive now. Again, you can see from the trail of oil that their Jeep 30 leads that, yeah, the south side of the ethanol plant is served. And I think it's mostly the tank cars go on the north end of the track, and the covered hoppers come in here. As with most ethanol plants, there's considerably a lot left of the corn once they extract what they need to make the ethanol. If they keep it wet, then it's sold to farmers nearby as cattle feed, and they ship it out in trucks. But if they dry it, then they can ship it out in covered hoppers, and it can find any customer anywhere in the country for it. So just to close the loop on that email that I think it was one that Ron had sent. Yes, this is a shot from just 2 years ago. They still need the track that goes under Highway 20. I think the posting was that they would never have put in a bridge had they known how little use the rail line would have received, rather than a grade crossing. Again, we're looking south. And that's the north side. That's the tank cars for ethanol that will be taken up to Ackley and presumably interchanged with the Canadian National. The other thing I wanted to mention was that this year's Train Fest, one of the features of Train Fest, of course, is the major manufacturers announcing their new products. There's a fairly new manufacturer called Class 1 Trains that you may have heard of, because they produce this really incredibly well detailed depressed center flat car with six-wheel trucks. And their new product this year, among others, is a wheel rack, not the complete car, just the wheel rack that can be placed either in a gondola or on a flat car of the appropriate length. And you see those slots in the wheel rack. This is a prototype shot, but this is basically what Class 1 Trains is offering. And so this is in action with a double-decker set of wheels being shipped on one of those wheel racks. And note the car is labeled freight car wheels only, even though these may well be 36-inch wheels. And here's a single deck being shipped with this on a wheel rack. So if this is the type of load that you've been trying to do for years, keep your eye out on Class 1 Trains, because they have the product. They were showing it at Train Fest, and it should be available to the public maybe even as we speak. And that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, David.
Did she do a wheel rack for their 40-foot flat car?
I think the wheel rack that they offer, one is a 60-foot rack for a 60-foot flat car, and they offer a 40-foot, but I think what they suggested was the 40-foot was more often seen inside gondolas.
No, I
But
mean,
sure,
Tichy Train Group used to make, or somebody used to make a wheel flat car that came with plastic wheel sets.
Yeah.
the other thing Class 1 Trains is offering are actual scale wheels, not Code 88, which are uh, closer to scale, but actual scale wheels for use in this wheel rack. And those also look very good. But, you know, when you look at the difference between our standard NMRA standard wheel width and then the so-called Code 88, you'd swear the Code 88 is scale, but then when you see actual scale wheels, you realize it would be very difficult to build HO scale track that could handle HO scale wheels. But a friend of mine, Ken Thompson, who occasionally has joined us on these evenings here, he runs his Code 88 wheels even over Atlas track. Most of his track is hand laid, but he even over Atlas track, and he has zero problems. So we could have narrower wheels seemingly without incompatibility, but and the wheels that Class 1 Trains are offering, they are for use on the wheel rack. I don't think they're actually intended for modeling use, but just watch, some guy will do it. So anyway, I wasn't aware that Tichy had something, but you see those wheel racks now on 60-foot cars, like I showed in my photos.
Yeah, the Tichy kit is their number 4023 wheel car. It looks like a 40-foot flat car with a stack of wheels on it.
Yeah, the Class 1 wheel rack is thus far just an aftermarket part. You buy your car elsewhere, and it looked as with most of their stuff, the attention to detail was very impressive. They've also brought out more of their depressed center flat cars with more prototype specific detail, metal decks versus wood, and the load supports that you see on the curved part of the depressed center in the flat car differing by railroad, and also different trucks, different versions of the specialized trucks that those heavy duty cars had. Anyway, it was just one of the things at TrainFest that caught my eye. I've reached the point where I don't even look at locomotives and freight cars anymore. I don't need that stuff, but detail parts do interest me.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you, David. John, are you ready to go?
Yep, I'm ready to go. It's going to be interesting for me tonight because I am on my wife's laptop because my desktop is an old dinosaur that should have been in the bottom of a recycle bin long, long ago, but I keep hanging on with it. And it's crazy because it's difficult to, it won't zoom anymore. So that's why I'm on here. Well, tonight, Greg allowed me to come on here and run because this is a really long story short. I started out on a project for National, just gathering the information of all of the MMRs to get them online so everyone could access their bios easily instead of digging back through years of magazines. So someone had to dig through the magazines, and it was me, and I started going through it. And I hadn't even got 10 years into those magazines. And I've literally started in 1935. It was a great opportunity to write a history for the NMRA. I mean, going through all this anyway. So I got a hold of Gordy and I said, how interested are you in doing this? You know, and he's, oh, yeah, great, fabulous. So it's 950 pages long. And that's the Reader's Digest version. What it basically is it's a timeline history. It's not a traditional one. So basically, you know, starting in 1935, any significant event or happening is listed, pictures, that kind of things, going all the way into this month. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. And then side note to that, I thought this would be great to put together a trivia thing, which you guys are going to get a portion of this tonight, just to learn little bits and pieces of information about the NMRA you never thought, and I'm betting people are going to find a lot of interesting things they they never knew tonight, because it's sure been enlightening to me. So having said all that, let me hit share on this and see what happens. And I'm doing this without glasses and 3 eye surgeries. It's looking good. Can we all see my beautiful face?
Yeah.
Okay. Usually during these presentations, we ask everyone to mute. Obviously, this is interactive. We do not want you to mute. Like, speak right up. This literally is like little bits, pieces in trivia. So if you know the answers to any of this stuff, feel free. It's very, very informal, and it's supposed to be completely interactive. So, does anybody know what city the NMRA was created in?
Milwaukee.
Very good.
We
You
can
probably
see,
want to
we
go
can
on
see the answers on the left.
You might want to
Yep.
go on presentation mode.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I want to go on presentation. Yeah, you guys cheated. Cheated. Thank you for telling me that. Hang on a second. I'm getting this down here.
This is what's
that'd be
known
a
as an
great-
open.
That'd be a
this is an
great way
open-
to do it, wouldn't it?
Open
Yeah,
book
that's how-
exam.
That's how I passed
Okay.
for a year of Spanish,
Okay.
by the way.
Okay. What date was the NMRA created? And you have full credit, it's a lot of money now for knowing what the day was.
Wow.
I'll even take a month.
Was it September?
November.
Very good. It was September. What
September
weekend
11th?
would you?
September
what weekend
11th?
would? Nope. What weekend would you? What's the big deal weekend in September?
Labor Day.
Labor Day. Yep. Sunday, September the 1st. The NMRA was created at 2:31 p.m. in the afternoon, and there is a photo of the meeting. And these photos, without Al Kalmbach and Model Railroader magazine, a lot of this would not exist. There wouldn't be an NMRA if it wasn't for Al Kalmbach. Any idea of how many people attended their very first meeting?
18.
Any more guesses?
It might have been 35.
71. Now, I thought that was a lot. They actually came. There was people that came from as far away as Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio. In what building was it held?
YMCA.
Very good. The YMCA on 4th Street, which is no longer there. Does anyone know what the 2 main reasons are for the creation of the NMRA? Everyone should know one for sure.
Standards.
Yep, standards is one. What's the second one?
Camaraderie.
Yes. And they thought the social need for getting together, which was thought to be odd by outside people. Some things never change. They're just not lucky enough to hang with us all. What was the most significant change at the 1938 convention involving the Constitution? And this one was actually, they conducted direct mail ballot to allow expression of opinion by all the members. The first 3 years, the only way things were done or anything was voted on was strictly at the convention. And if you weren't there, you didn't have a say. So that was pretty early on. That was by the 3rd year. They started doing it in 39. This one, I had a good time. And when I first gave this, it was real interesting. We're a real sexist organization, women shouldn't be in it, all that good stuff. When did the first time, what year a woman joined?
$1940.
Very good. Good guess. Mrs. Alice, the earliest one I've had so far has been 1960. And I was absolutely surprised when I learned that. Who is the longest serving business manager in the history of the NMRA? Anybody have any idea of who he was or where his office was, anything like that? I heard this in the 70s and couldn't believe it. It was true. His name was Bob Bast. And where was Bob's office located?
Was he in Racine, Wisconsin? Oh, nope.
Nope. It was in the basement of his home in Canton, Ohio. Literally until the mid 1970s, that's where the NMRA home office is, the basement of a person's house. I just could not imagine him processing all that paper. I don't know how he could have done it and how he managed all that.
Have no computer.
Yeah, all by paper, the mountain of paper. I talked to Jenny Hendricks down at the office, and then we had a long discussion, and she was saying this. She said, "You wouldn't believe everything we've got here." She said, "I don't know how he could have done it in the basement. You know, he must have had stuff in his lining his bedroom, and every room just lined with office stuff." Anybody want to take a guess of how many years Bob Bass served? Long time. He served 26 and a half years.
Wow.
And what's really interesting about that, NMRA is about to be 90, and Jenny Hendricks is closing in on 24 or 25 years. So between the two of them, they've held that position for 50 years. That's amazing. What year was the NMRA incorporated? Do I have a guess? Awful quiet out there.
Everybody's looking in their old copy.
1946 October. So that was relatively early on. Where and when was the first NMRA convention held west of the Mississippi River?
Oh.
I'm Kendall.
1947 in Oakland, California.
Oh.
And it was at this time, too, that they wrote an agreement into the Constitution where they would rotate the conventions east and west. There was one point, one of the regions in like 1944, 45 broke away because they just felt completely isolated, and the NMRA didn't care about them. Pacific Coast region, but they eventually came back. And I had no idea about that. Does anyone know what the tragic event was that occurred at the 1950 Milwaukee Convention?
Yes, the famous speed rail disaster of a head-on collision between two electric interurban cars. And one of them was an interurban car built to steam railroad standards, and the other one was a light rail car running on the same track. The engineer was distracted by people asking questions and failed to notice a red signal, and there was a head-on collision.
Yep. Do you know who the engineer was? Do you know who the engineer running it?
Jay Mater. And he owned Speed Rail. He was the
he was the owner.
And actually a staffer on Model Railroader magazine, a guy named White, W-I-G-H-T, died in that crash. And another Kalmbach employee, George Gloff, was on the car but jumped at the last minute. And there were a lot of injuries, quite apart from the 10 people who died.
Yep.
And the
owner who was driving it shouldn't have been driving it because he was not qualified or licensed to do it. But I guess when you own the place, you can do whatever you want.
And he also jumped.
Yes.
I lived for about 4 years, just a few miles from the site of the accident. You can still see the right of way.
Oh, wow. Okay. That near, was it near downtown? I'm assuming it was near downtown Milwaukee, right?
No, actually it was quite a distance away in West Dallas, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
So probably about 10 miles west of the downtown.
Okay. Very good. All right. And our next one is, where was the loneliest layout located on the planet in 1954? I just laughed when I read this. Oh, wrong way. In the Amazon jungle, a gentleman working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture set up a layout at an experimental station in Peru on the east side of the Andes Mountains. How there was electricity, or he had power there. Maybe it was battery operated. I couldn't imagine. That was a good story. For too many years, the wives of members were basically ignored and were referred to as rail widows. What was the name of the group who stepped up to fix this? Who was their creator, and what year was the group created? Anybody know anything kind of like a women's auxiliary? Any hear anything like that before? These women were called the Railettes, is what they were called. And these three ladies here were the primary ones. The one that started is on the far right, Faith Ryder. Then sadly, she died, I think, about 10 to 14 years after that, somewhere in that area. But she started this at the in the Pacific Coast region in 1955, and then it caught on nationally. Okay, what's this one? Come on. Are scale model trains toys?
Depends on your wife.
Yep. According to the United States Department of Customs, they are not toys. This had to do with tariffs. Can Santa join the NMRA? And if he can, what region would he be in? You guys are closer. You're connected to him. We're connected to him, I should say. Anyone know? It's the Niagara region that actually reaches all the way to the North Pole. And surprisingly, there are no members there. I wish I'd stopped going the wrong way. Who was the first Native American to be elected NMRA regional president?
Was
And
that
this
Adam
gentleman
Hunt? Was that Adam
Nope.
Hungry Wolf?
Nope. This gentleman was heavily involved for years. His name was Lone Eagle Payne. He was in the mid-central region, became president in 58. He died many years later, but he was always in the NMRA. This is going to be interesting. Someone actually knows this. Who was the first person to bring the idea of an achievement program to the NMRA? Who brought that up? He was the editor of a model railroad craftsman.
Hal Karstens?
Oh,
Hal Karstens. He wrote about it in late 1958. It never actually reached the board until 1960. Who claimed to be the only male railette? This is George Ryder. He is Faith's husband. Only one bad picture of him. Who became NMRA Life member number 1? Very, very famous person. Everyone knows his name.
William Walters.
Yay.
I got a name tag on my mannequin out there, and he says he's Casey Jones, number 1.
All right, not him, Newman. Doggone it. If I learn left from right, I'm new on this. When did the Achievement Awards program become approved formally, and who was appointed the first national chairman? And the answer is it was approved in 1961 at the Cleveland Convention. And the very first person who chaired the entire thing was a gentleman named Douglas Smith, who also became Master Model Railroader number 1. And that picture is cropped and cut like that because it has some significance later on. Who were the first 3 members to earn Master Model Railroader? Doug Smith, Ed Van Leer, and Jack Taylor Kirby. And these guys, if you ever take the time to get on the NMRA.org site and you dig back through all through the national magazines and start reading, you will be reading a ton about these gentlemen. They carried a lot of weight. This really shocked me. What year was a computer used to operate a model railroad for the first time?
Wow. Would that be the Museum of Science and Industry layout?
All it says is what year was a computer used to operate it for the first time? And I would have never got this in a billion years.
1955.
Nope, just a little bit later than that. But that was a good guess. Yep, it was actually 1962. First public store of a computer used to operate a model train. I like the old Chicago Science and Museum layout. They changed it to O scale, or excuse me, HO scale many years ago. I saw the first one. I don't care for the HO one. Okay, originally there were 9 categories in the Achievement Award program. It only took 6 to earn an MMR back in those days. In 63, another certificate was added and raised the total to 10, but you had to get 7. Anyone have any idea what the certificate that was added in 1963? I'm really surprised that this was not initially. It was scenery.
Huh.
And bonus points, does anyone recognize that? And I'm betting the answer is yes.
Gone,
Napoleon
Alan.
defeated.
Yes, very good. This blew my mind. What is the record length of an NMRA national board meeting? I called Gordy and told him he'd have to break this record.
Is there a year available?
For this meeting?
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
there is, but I don't have it on here. I don't know it off the top. It was the early 1960s.
Okay.
Somewhere between 60 and 65, but I don't know the exact year.
Do you know the topic of the issue?
No, I imagine they talked about everything under the sun and the moon.
Yeah, I think I know about this one because a friend of mine was on it, was at there.
Oh my gosh. 14 and there it is, 64. Yep, 14 and a half hours. I don't know what you talk about for 14 and a half hours in a meeting.
The X2F.
They were just having some good old camaraderie.
Yeah,
Wow.
They were
I think
enjoying their railroad socializing.
I think
Oh
they'd
my
be talking
gosh.
about I think they'd be talking about their bladders after a while.
Well,
Yeah,
it doesn't
I
say
would
they
too.
didn't get. It doesn't say they didn't take a break.
Yeah, we've had a couple of meetings that have lasted region or even division like an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes. And even after those, we're like, we've got to figure out a way to streamline this because people begin to lose focus after that long of a time. I just couldn't imagine. A change occurred in the achievement program to allow division superintendents to earn an official certificate. What year did that occur? That was a 1964 thing. And superintendents are the only one at division level that are allowed to do that. And someone interestingly asked this not too long ago on Facebook, who and when did the first actual true prototype railroader earn an MMR? And the answer was lucky number 13, a gentleman named Donald Robinson. Anybody know who that is? Very famous.
It's Al Kalmbach.
Nope.
No,
But it's
Gordon Varney.
Gordon Varney. Yep, it was the
Yep.
right arrow. That's why that's confusing. Okay. There you go. Who is that?
That's Al.
Yep, that's him. And they gave him a special award there. He actually became the secretary for the NMRA in like late 39, 40. The war was starting. They couldn't get anybody. The NMRA almost wasn't. In 1943, they got to a point where they had less than $200 in the bank account, and people had sent in checks for memberships, and there was no one to process them. It was not the best time that the association's ever had. Who was the first person to earn an MMR who was not a United States citizen? And it wasn't Gordy. Gentleman's name was Jock Oliphant. He was from Great White North, Canada.
Okay.
Anybody? This is interesting because people have been really bugging Ray Pershing. He's been coming up with just interesting tidbits of information about MMRs. and wondering when people got them, what years. Anyone that the program actually started in August of 61. The first people were actually announced in October of 62. And so by the end of 1969, guess how many people were MMRs?
24.
Very close. Very close. 30. Where, I'll bet some of you guys know this one. Where and when was the first overseas convention?
Had to be London.
It was
or
London.
England. Yeah,
Was London. Got a guess for a year?
78.
A little
Earlier
earlier,
than that.
71. But that was good.
Yeah.
That was good that you knew that. Who was the youngest ever NMRA member? And this is a trick question, because someone sent Bob Bass membership information when their baby was born. And they asked on the information slip, how old is the person and how long in the hobby? And the father put the same answer, 3 hours. That's getting started in the right direction, right? Okay. In the bullet, this is interesting because some people don't even realize the NMRA actually had its own physical headquarters building. Anybody have any idea of when they first started talking about a building?
Oh, I remember the fundraisers that they were doing for it.
Yeah.
It had to be in the 70s when they started talking about
Yes.
it, and
Yes.
in the 80s when it got built.
Yep. 72. I'm not going to ruin it later. You're right. 72 is when they first started talking about it. The NMRA office moved from Bob Bass' basement to what city in March of 1976?
Chattanooga.
Nope. This is an easy one for me because I live next to it.
Oh,
Indianapolis. Yep, it moved from his basement to Indianapolis in 1976. When did the NMRA main office begin to move its information onto computers? Also 1976.
When they ran out of index cards.
Someone said this, what city was chosen as the location for the brand new yet to be constructed headquarters?
Chattanooga.
There you go. Chattanooga. How many members are in their MMRs in the 1970s? Hit just a few more than the 60s. 49. So it was slow going. There were 79 people in about the first 19 years. What date was the front cover of the bulletin first printed in color?
Hmm.
1980, December of 1980. They also improved the quality of the paper in the early years, and I've got them. I've got a stack of boxes that are approximately 5 feet wide and 3 feet tall from 1935 to 2024. They're all neatly little 2-inch thick boxes. So I've got the individual years split, but the original papers were real delicate. Somebody said this, when was the groundbreaking ceremony for the new headquarters? They talked about it in 72, and when was groundbreaking? And someone said it. 82. So 10 years. That's really pretty good because that was a major undertaking for our association to do that. When did the NMRA move into the new headquarters in Tennessee? In 83. So just about a year later. The lady sitting in that very right picture is named Midge Reber. She actually was the lady that took over when it came to Indianapolis. She initially went down there with them.
I actually have a model of that I got off of some kid at a train show.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I've seen the picture of it online. Yeah, they actually made those to make money. Okay, a new category was added in 1980, was announced. What was the new certificate's name and what year was it announced? In the 80s? And this is the really tough one to get. This is the master builder prototype. And here in the CID, we just had a gentleman do a diorama of his family's hometown. It's actually a small place called Marieville in Canada. I think he is the only one in the CID to get this. He's a 3D printing person, and he literally got diagrams and prints of all these buildings around that train station and constructed all these buildings. It's an amazing model. When did the first woman run for national office, excuse me, and what was her name? Simple name. Elaine Jones. This was 1986. So it took quite a while for a lady to run for national office. When did model railroaders go online initially? And the answer was 86 on CompuServe. How many people remember CompuServe?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about his online thing, but that was in its infancy. When was the golden?
My uncle had a CompuServe email address until the day he died.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize they had email addresses. Anybody know when the golden spike was added to the AP decade? Middle of the 1980s too, 87. We should know these. What are the 3 highest awards the NMRA may bestow upon a member? You guys have got to know 1 or 2 of these for sure, because I know we hear about them all the time.
Well, there's MMR, but there's one that begins with H, I think, that I don't know what the letters stand for.
Honorary lifetime member. That's the big of the big. The 3 are the President's Award, the Distinguished Service Award, and the Honorary Lifetime Member. And they've got them all listed on the on NMRA.org. You could go under and read them, and you can read the people that have earned those over the years. The Honorary Lifetime Member one, though, is a really big deal. As of the late 80s, only 3 had been honored with these awards. Who are these people? And I'm just curious. I'm sure you guys have heard Whit Towers, Jack Ware, and Dean Freitag. Did these names ring a bell with you guys?
Oh yeah.
I've met all 3.
Okay. And I think especially Whit Towers was the bulletin editor for 10 years at one point. But all 3 of these guys, they served national offices, committees. I mean, they did everything that there was to be done. There should be a statue of all 3 of them somewhere. And when did the first women in model railroading article appear? I had to do this because Cynthia started a series just a few years ago, but I couldn't believe when I accidentally came across this. March of '91, they did an article called Women in Model Railroading. Just a coincidence. Who was the first MMR from down under, Australia? And they really love it down there too. I've met a lot of people from Australia in the last couple of years. His name was Philip Knife. He was MMR 148 back in April of '89. Good group of people, and they like doing. I don't know what it is. They're really big into the narrow gauge thing there. Who was the first person with an inside center third rail to achieve MMR? One from my side. This gentleman's name was Ronald Ralph Rise. He was in Florida, and he also helped a lot of the Boy Scouts get awards and that kind of thing down there. Was in it for many years, but he got a Lionel train for a Christmas gift many years ago. I think in the 1940s, and he said what my friends thought was odd about me. He said I just never gave up the third rail, but he loved scratch building. He just scratch built everything. Who was the very first lady MMR? This really stuck with me because I learned this way back when. I actually knew this. Anybody remember? Lady named Mary Miller. her and her husband Bill, they had a super great narrow gauge layout in their home. There were several articles about them in a model railroad.
I think she also won the best Model of the Month award from Model Railroader for a scratch-built narrow gauge combine.
Ah, very good. I don't doubt it, because their work was just out of this world, both of them. When was the mortgage burned on the new headquarters building? It was 92. I thought it was interesting because the first mention was 72, the groundbreaking was 82, and they actually got it paid off in 92. And when you think about that, that's really good. And I know they did in every magazine, they were begging people for money continuously.
John,
And it worked.
hey, John,
Yes, sir.
what caused them to decide on Chattanooga?
I don't know. There was no specific information in there. My only assumption for something like that would be it would be centralized more or less kind of in the country. And I'm sure that's where they got the best deal real estate wise at that time. But I don't have anything to support that. That is my assumption.
I'd like to
wonder.
know why they sold the building.
Well, long story short, my opinion, when they started doing this, it was brilliant because we needed places to store records and files and file cabinets and all this stuff. By the time 2000 rolled around, you could hold an office load of material on a floppy disk in your hand. It just became absolutely obsolete. And I'll ruin it far down the road. The building was sold in 2014. It's actually on the grounds of the Tennessee Valley Railway Museum. The NMRA was not even looking to sell the building. The museum came to them and said, "We want this," and they just made them an offer they couldn't refuse. And the library that was there, they got all of the library stuff moved to
That's my girl.
they got all of the library stuff moved to I think it's the California State Museum. They got a deal where they got it for free. And I mean, nowadays, I mean, they're in much smaller digs in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, and it's just a lease deal, but it is considerably less expensive to be where they are, and it's more than sufficient. But initially, pre-computer and all the technical advancements, I mean, fiscally it made sense, but after a time, it just became an albatross around the neck of the NMRA.
I was told that basement was all storage, the whole thing. That's a pretty good sized building, but downstairs there's nothing but storage. I mean, crammed
Interesting.
full.
I hope I get a look. I'm gonna the convention's in Chattanooga in 27, and I passed through there, but I've never stopped and seen the building or anything. But I'm going to be sure and do that. Let's who is this man on here? He actually was the very first secretary of the NMRA in 1935. Legendary in the NMRA. This is Harry Bondurant. And he actually was also in that speed rail accident, and survived. Lived a long time. There was an NMRA credit card. I couldn't believe that. That was 1992. Any idea who that is? This is Jack Ware, Antris Jack Ware. He was president, and like I say, there should be a statue. He did everything there was to do in the NMRA. Who was the first lady to earn the motive power certificate in the AP? That's a tough one. June Meyer. And eventually, when she got her MMR, her husband, and Rick, they became the second couple after Bill and Mary Miller to become MMRs. this gentleman too, he did yeoman's work. He legendary in the NMRA too. Any idea of who that is? Anyone heard of Ed Ravenscroft?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard. It's amazing. I've gone through the history and I see all these pictures, and I mean, I wouldn't have known these guys if they'd have punched me in the nose.
You knew their
So it was
names.
real. Yes, the names, you hear the names, and I'll tell you what's real amazing. Sometime the history, they're working on it right now. I mean, I've got all the information together, but they're actually putting it together in an electronic book. One day, do yourself a favor and read it. It's quite a bit to read, but it's just fascinating to read what some of these guys did. I mean,
Ravenscroft had an operating hump yard. It used puffs of air in between the rails to retard the cars.
oh my gosh, I never heard that. Yeah.
And I think he was a high-ranking executive at what's that, Abbott Labs?
Oh, really?
So he was very wealthy.
Wow. It's amazing how many of these people have went through. They were doctors, a lot of doctors, a lot of dentists, a lot of pastors. Because someone was asking me, I just know. But I'll tell you, the one that still just boggles my mind is we actually have a rocket scientist. Has anyone ever heard of Leslie Eaton before? Yeah,
He's the one who
Leslie.
gives clinics. Yeah.
Yeah,
Seen,
yeah, she is brilliant. I think she tolerates us ants. I just can't believe. I would like to. I hope to meet her one day. This lovely lady is Mary Barstow. She was the fourth lady MMR. Any idea or any guesses who these two guys are?
Greg Boltman's brothers.
Close. Maybe paternity test. These are the first set of brothers to earn MMR, the Mitchell brothers, Tracy and Terry. When did the NMRA bulletin become scale rails? I put this in there because I got asked so many times, I got sick of. Any idea when they change it? Because you know what's really confusing about our national magazine now, originally it was called the Bulletin. And nowadays there's a section in the national magazine called the Bulletin. So when people say the Bulletin, it used to be the entire magazine versus about 5 or 6 pages now. The Bulletin became scale rails in 2003. Who is this gentleman? And I know everyone's heard of him. You may not know this picture. This guy wrote 300 books, countless articles. I mean, I immediately knew his name. Any idea? That is Paul Mallory. And if you guys got model railroad books, magazines, old one, I guarantee you, he's an author of one of them. You got something that he wrote. He is prolific. I'm guessing you know this guy, don't you?
John Armstrong.
Very good. The Dean of Track Planners. I would have loved to have met him. And this blew my mind.
You know what he was?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you know what he did as a living?
Not really. I think somebody told me he was an engineer, not a railroad, but an engineer, civil engineer.
I thought he designed theater sets.
That was
I'm sorry,
Frank Ellison.
Was that Ellison?
I think it was Frank Ellison who designed
Oh,
theater sets.
Thank you, Dave.
And what did you say Frank Ellison designed?
Theater sets.
He was a theater man.
A theater. Okay, very good. Yes, yes, he was a theater. He wrote the famous The Art of Model Railroading in the magazines, and it came out in several different magazines. I did not know this. You guys probably knew this, and I just couldn't believe it. Before this year, if you join the NMRA, if you paid, you belong to national. But if you wanted to join your division or region, you had to do it separately. It was a big mess. So finally, in this year, finally joining national meant that you belonged to everything. Who knows what year, what close that happened. I'll bet a few of you guys may have been members then. January of 2005. Do we have anyone here prior to January of 2005?
I was a member prior to 2005, but that change happened after my membership lapsed. So when I came back, it was the way it is now.
Did you have to pay money to join your division or region?
Yes, I had to pay money for the NMRA National and the Lone Star region at the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was in the Lone Star region at this time, 2005, and I don't really remember paying 2 dues, but I may have. 'Cause I was in the Lone Star region for several years.
I know some people did and some people didn't. Some of them got in free some kind of way to like a division or reading. I just
probably
know
did pay. I just didn't remember. I mean, I didn't think about it.
What I'm
all
remembering, what I'm remembering is that the paperwork from National, you could elect not to pay the additional amount for your region, but it was all still on the national paperwork. At least that's the way I remember.
That's what I'm thinking too. Because I think I only paid once a year, and I bet it's on the same paperwork. You just checked the box for your region, and then paid whatever that was.
But you could opt out.
Yeah, but I didn't. That was part of the.
yeah, it's interesting that I know there were. Hey Newman, can you
Yeah.
Newman, can you mute?
Yeah.
You got
Well,
background
I was about
sound.
ready to say something, so I unmuted.
There we
Yeah.
go. I'm sorry, that got my train of thought. But prior to that, I just couldn't imagine. It must have been a huge headache for people to join, and of course, it was all over money. And they had this had been brought up 20 years earlier that people wanted it, but there was enough resistance to it because people at the region and the division level were arguing about how much money they were going to get or how they were going to get the money. But it's unbelievable to think that this started in 1935 and it took 70 years for us to be able to pay one set of dues just to belong to everything, which makes good sense. But well, it finally got worked out. Life membership stopped being offered in what year? And the answer was April of 1985, and that was due to financial reasons because you could start getting a life membership at 60s, and then doggone these guys, they kept living. How dare they? We had a guy that has anyone ever heard of Bob Kuhn before?
Yes,
Any Bob? Yep.
he was a charter.
Bob,
He was a charter member.
Yep, very good. He was there from day one. He was 16 years old. He died in September of 2015. He was a member for 80 years. And to the best of my knowledge, that's still the record. But I'm thinking a gentleman named Harold Russell, who was Master Model Railroader 14. I think he's been in like 70, 76, 77 years, still with us. So that'd be something if he did, but I just can't believe that anyone made 80 years with this organization. That's amazing. I certainly won't. Okay, when did the Rail Pass membership start? It's July of 2005. So that's been going on now for about 19 years. Does anyone, I'm curious, say someone said they were from the Lone Star region. Do you recognize any of these guys in this picture?
I do not.
This is Lone Star. Albert Boos is in the middle. He's actually AP. The two guys on the ends, they're a father and son. And this is the first father and son duo.
What's their last name?
Albert
Richard
Boos is.
Yeah, it's
Richard
Albert
Miller.
Boos. Yeah, the last name should be Richardson. I just caught a typo that needs to be changed. It's Richardson. I'm glad we said this because I need to get this corrected. All right. Earlier, I showed you Doug Smith being Master Model Railroader #1. He was marked in that picture. He isn't in this picture. And the only other MMR in this picture is the guy way in the back to the right. His name is Watson House. They called him Waddy. He was Master Model Railroader #5. But the significance of this picture is it appeared in the Saturday Evening Post in May of 1960, which was one of the biggest steel newspapers in the country. Other at that particular point in time, I mean, that was a great boost to the a great public relations for the NMRA, because in those days and times, I think the only thing else you could have been done better than that was be in the New York Times or the Ed Sullivan Show. So that was really cool. That's out of the Saturday Evening Post. This gentleman is named Tom Draper. He was the treasurer for 27 years. He retired in the late 90s. I just cannot imagine that. That is one heck of a commitment. We've had several people in the association that have just served like a career's worth of time. Just amazing. Who is the man on the left and the lady on the right? Fran Hale is on the right. She's the lady. And her husband, Miles, they became the third couple turn NMRs. And actually, he got his very early. He was number 90. He was way back at the start.
Now, I know John Lawrence, and he is from the Lone Star region.
Oh, very good. Okay.
And he was actually in the same club I was in San Antonio.
Neat.
Does a lot of
Okay.
clinics, or used to anyway.
Yeah, I think they're involved with Model Railroad University still. Heavily involved in that, I believe, and modeling with the masters. And when did Scale Rails change its name to the National Magazine? 2010. So it was only Scale Rails roughly 7 years. These two young guys here, their dad took this picture. They are the second set of brothers starring MMR Prushlers. Does anyone know Marvin or Mark Prusler?
Yeah, they're
I know
from they're Wisconsin guys near Sheboygan and Manitowoc. They're in the Winnebago division.
Mm-hmm. And I know I think it's I can't remember. I think it's Marvin that I see on Facebook a lot. I see his name come up a lot. Okay, this is just unbelievable. Here's a long story short. This gentleman got his MMR in the Central Indiana division where I am. And I've only been a member since August of 18, like 6 years now. And one of the reasons, I mean, I've only been in the hobby for like 50 years, so I guess I'm a slow mover to join. But I joined these guys here and I've seen some of their work and they're just incredibly talented. And I said, so who are the MMRs? I've never met an MMR before and I'm really interested. And they're like, we don't have any. I'm like, you're kidding. Well, who was the last person here that was, and only one guy could come up with a name here. He said, I think his name was like Ron. I think that's what it was, but it's been a long time. And I thought, I just can't believe they can't remember who this guy was. And then I figured out why. In 2010, Ron Lane earned his MMR, and he said he holds a dubious distinction. And that is, this is a quote from him, I may earn the dubious distinction of having the longest elapsed time between my first certificate and in his last certificate. He's saying 48 years. That's just unbelievable. And I know in that time span, he must have moved multiple times. And at least all I've been told is when a person's awarded MMR, they list them in the area where they actually earn the MMR, regardless if they earn 6 certificates in Texas, but the last one in Rhode Island, they would list Rhode Island. But I've heard of 20 years before and stuff. But if this, and I have not verified this, but boy, if this is true, this would be pretty hard to beat that. 48 years between. That lady there is Georgia Dahlberg, the 7th lady. The youngest person to earn MMR. And how old was that person? And the hint is he belongs to the magazine editor, our current one. Anybody know?
Joel Priest?
Very good. You know how old he was when he got it?
I'm thinking 13 or 14.
You're close. He was 12. And I know Cynthia, I know she's right on the bubble. They'll be the first family. If she does it, that'll be kind of neat because we got fathers and brothers, but that would be kind of neat. All 3 of them have it. Who was the first lady elected to the national board and where was she from? Kathy Milliot. And if you've ever seen her, she's got all kinds of videos. She's from the United Kingdom. She's got all kinds of videos modeling and doing different things. She is incredibly talented.
The
And with
videos
this,
are great.
yes, they are. And with this, I'm stopping. I've got like just 175 random things, and we've been going roughly 50 minutes. And I figure that's enough to wear anybody out.
I have to send you some stuff about Ken Mortimer.
I'm sorry, I cut myself off.
I have to send you some stuff about Ken Mortimer.
Okay, very good.
He designed the RP-25 wheel flange.
Okay.
And
He was a
was-
former
and he
president
was my
too,
Boy
wasn't
Scout
he?
leader
He's a
Twice.
former president, isn't he?
twice, and he was my Boy Scout leader.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Have you got something to write down my email with?
Yeah.
Because
Sort
yeah,
of.
I'm interested in anything like that. And one thing I would like to mention to you guys, if you ever run across anybody with any kind of historical pictures or anything, if you would share them with me, that would be absolutely great. Because I accidentally, when I was collecting all of these bulletins, I discovered this bulletin. It was special. It was completely separate from all the other ones. It's called the Silver Anniversary Journal, and they made it in 1960. And in that journal, there is a picture of the first president, Haverly, Pop Haverly, which is not a great picture. He's standing on a handcar, but he's there. And then they've got 2 outstanding pictures of the 1936 executive board and the 1937 executive board. I've never seen anything like that before, so it was really cool. So yeah, any old historical pictures, any significant things, that would be great. And the second thing is I've been chasing people, and I'm going to make it my mission in the future to do this, is if there's any kind of significant event that happens in your division, somebody gets an award, somebody goes over and above the call of duty, anything at all like that, it's like, get a picture of them. I can't tell you how many times, write a story, write me, tell me. I mean, even if it's not going to be a magazine article, something significant be put in the history. And just a little example of that, the Central District Director, Fred Soward, just wrote in passing on Facebook last week, I think it was, his wife, Barbara, they were at a show somewhere and a blind gentleman came through and he didn't have anyone. And Barbara took the time to escort him and take him around to all the vendors and stuff. And everybody was really nice to him and, let him feel the stuff and that, but it was just great that she literally just became his escort. I mean, what a fabulous lady she is. And just anything like that of significance. And while I'm rattling thinking of it, I'm on some of the editors' cases about when we write stories about people, you wouldn't believe the flips, bends, and twists I had to go through to find some of these people's pictures. And there's a guy named Dr. Robert Chait, who was Master Model Railroader 21. He was a dentist in Florida. He did everything for the NMRA, you name it, even donated significant amounts of money, traveled the country, promoted the, got members. I mean, you name it, this man did it. And the best I could find was like, you could see he was standing with a group of people and you got one little tiny headshot is all I could ever see of him. And then thank goodness I got clear up into like the 2018 magazine, and I couldn't believe it. Years after all this, finally older, there was a picture of him standing there with someone, a good, clear, actual picture of him. But they write about all these people doing these significant things, and then there's never a picture. And truly, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that's what kind of started this whole thing on me, and this history kick in the MMR. Yeah, I looked to see, well, who was the first MMR? Oh, his name was Doug Smith. I mean, what does that tell you? Doug Smith? I mean, I've known 3 or 4 people named Doug Smith before. And he was actually the president of the Northeast region. Like I said, the first AP chair. He edited the Coupler, which is their newsletter, and several other things. You know, you could read about him in the magazines, but it's just unbelievable. You can't, not one picture of these people. So, but I was lucky. One guy was just, I thought I would never get one of, and ironically, he's on the back of like I think it was December of 1957 or 58 bulletin. His name is William Bill Hewlett. He is a Master Model Railroader 18. And I actually dug around and bugged enough people that I found some people that knew him, and they could give me information about him. They could even send me pictures of his layout, not a picture of him. But then I was so glad on the back of one of the bulletins, he's actually sitting on a train. I mean, the train was big enough, obviously. He could sit on the engine and was driving the engine, and a bunch of people were looking at him. But he lived in he was the postmaster of some teeny little tiny town in northern Canada. And I didn't think there was any way I was ever going to be able to get any kind of a photo of him or much, but that worked out okay. So,
What's your
and that's
email
all I've
address?
got. I'm sorry.
What's your email address?
It's indycop999@hotmail.com. It's their digit number. So it is INDYCOP999@hotmail.com.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
Thanks, John, and thanks, David, also. Thank you guys for presenting. Next week, Clark has threatened to treat us to his new presentation. I don't know what the title is or the subject, but we'll find out, and that'll be good fun. And then we'll have to decide if we want to do the 26th. I'll be around, so we can do it if people come on. And same with the 2nd of January. We're already getting to 2025. But anyway, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for putting that together, John, and thanks for the info, David. We will see you guys next week. Have a great Thursday.
Hey, before you guys go, sorry, just so you know, I know it's way too late, but I'm telling you, do you know what Entertainment Junction is in Ohio? The place that has $25 million worth of G-scale trains? It's out of this world awesome and just north of Cincinnati. It's been there for 25, 30 years. They're closing January the 5th. This weekend, the members of the CID are actually going to go down there and visit. And this place is called Entertainment. So if you've never heard of it, when you get off of here, get on your computer and Google and see it. And if you want to see it, you've got about 3 weeks to do it. And it really is. It's just absolutely the most incredible train display you will see anywhere. And unfortunately, the owners tried to sell it, and there were no takers. So it's going to be parceled out. It's a shame.
I was just down there, and that thing is fabulous.
Very good. Well, we'll
Go.
see you guys. Have a great day.
You got
Thank
it.
you.